Okay, if you've seen some of our past webinars or have downloaded some of our material, you've probably seen this figure. Essentially, there is a bunch of existing infrastructure today, right? There's a lot of deployed fiber in the ground. There are also these devices that we use every day called encryptors or decryptors, and their sole purpose is to, encrypt data and decrypt data. And so when two sites want to communicate, Alice and Bob, they use these devices, these encryptors, to essentially scramble the information they want to send, so that when it traverses a classical network like the internet, it is scrambled such that anyone listening would be essentially impossible to decrypt unless you know that key. Okay, and then finally, when the receiving end, in this case site B, gets that scrambled data, it has the same key as the encryptor, so it can actually decrypt that information and recover what Alice wanted to send. So the point we want to make here with this figure is that there's existing infrastructure today. There are encryptors in your Wi-Fi routers that you're probably using to access this webinar. So encryptors are prevalent and everywhere. These encryptors are hungry for keys. You need to feed them with encryption keys so they can do their job. Now, the question then becomes, how are these encryptors actually establishing these keys between each other? And that's the security vulnerability that QKD and quantum networking solves, right? So essentially, all we're doing, the quantum network, you can think of it as an underlay to your existing network infrastructure. It's an additional capability. The quantum network is generating quantum entanglement and distributing it to our two sites here. And through BBM92 or other QKD protocols, you can measure this entanglement to produce keys. And we're delivering those keys to the encryptors. So all we're doing is changing where these encryptors are getting their keys from. Right now, it's done kind of out in the open over the internet. We're actually using the internet to do this key exchange. And the way we do that involves a lot of math-based protocols, and there's a lot of mathematical structure in how this key establishment is done. And that can actually be exploited by adversaries to learn the keys that the encryptors have. But if you have this kind of underlay, this kind of out-of-band key establishment that a quantum network can provide, you get these additional security benefits, and we're solving that key establishment problem. Okay, now under the hood, what does it look like? What are these quantum secure communication boxes, these red boxes at the bottom? What does it consist of? So we do need dedicated quantum hardware in order to actually, do the protocol, right? We need to measure these photons. We need to generate the entanglement and do the random basis selection, right? So we need quantum hardware and photon detectors, photon sources, optical switches, things like that at the physical layer. Then we also need an operating system. We need a control plane to actually, talk to the quantum hardware and coordinate this complex dance that these hardware components need to do, and exchange information between the nodes about basis information or timing information. We need timing and synchronization here. So we need a platform, a control plane to actually execute the protocols that we want to do. The quantum hardware is, doing its job. It's generating photons or measuring a single photon arrival. Like, they have predetermined roles, but there's no logic about them inherently. So we need something to actually bring these components together to actually put some logic onto the nodes and do something like BBM92. Finally, we need a key buffer. We need a place to store the keys that we generate. Okay, so that's kind of zoomed in what the red box there at the bottom consists of. Now, I talked about these encryptors, the blue boxes, and there are many different layers that people use encryption for. And if you've heard of the IP stack of the internet, there are many protocols that we rely on. Even TLS, for example, or HTTPS. You're probably accessing this live webinar over some kind of protocol, and that protocol under the hood does use encryption, and so it does need encryption keys, right? So there are many different integration points. how we can actually use these keys from our QSC boxes, from the key buffers. We can deliver them to the encryptors, and they can use them in many different ways, whether it's for layer 1 encryption, layer 2 encryption, and so forth. We also need a way to communicate between the classical network and the quantum network. And this gets into the orchestration layers and the network management layers that we spoke about in last webinar. So we need to be able to have a nice communication between the existing infrastructure and the quantum network, right? So this can be things like security policies. How often am I refreshing my keys? The quantum network can actually provide alerts and alarms to the classical network, right? So there are some interesting security integrations between the two. Okay, so now we'll be diving a little deeper into the physical layer itself. What does this quantum hardware look like? And what do these components actually do? And how do they help execute BPM 92?